So in this episode of the Jazz Guitar Breakdown, the second episode, I'm going to break down a recent video I did of Summertime, because when I watched the video, I realized I had employed a bunch of these techniques that could be considered, outside playing. And it kind of makes sense on this tune because one, it's a minor tune, and minor tunes having a darker tonality, they often lend themselves to more of that style of playing. Not necessarily, but sometimes. And also, it's such a repetitive tune. I mean, it's just a one minor to a four minor with, it goes to the major and then a turnaround, that it doesn't have a complex series of chord changes that are kind of force you to come up with creative and interesting ideas. Just the repetition of the tune, I think it often spurs people to, at least I know it does for me, to start to come up with more interesting harmonic and melodic ideas over that static sort of harmony. So in that first chorus, I'm really playing pretty traditional, standard jazz stuff. You could think of it as, since it's mostly a minor tonality, A minor chord and a D minor chord. People group this material in different ways. I'm certainly playing things that could be derived from, say, the A melodic minor scale, the A harmonic minor scale, the A Dorian scale, and all these minor scales for sure. I tend to not group them so much by the scales. You just want to organize the information the way it works for you. Because I got a lot of my information into my ear through transcribing, it sort of always made sense to group things in terms of chords for me. So I tend to think in terms of the straight A minor material or A minor 7 material. Stuff like that. And then I also think about D7 over A minor, which is pretty standard. I mean, a lot of the notes are similar, but things like that. And also thinking about E7, the 5 chord. Even when I'm playing over A minor, it's very typical to imply the 5-to-1 relationship. So, things like that. The second chorus, I start to play a little bit more adventurously, a little bit more outside. So I start right away with this riff, which is, I guess I learned it from transcribing, listening to a lot of the great players from that 60s era, like Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, on the guitar. Certainly, I remember listening to and playing through some of the old Joe DiOrio books that had some good examples of this kind of a sound. You can hear this kind of language in a lot of players for sure. I remember just coming across it over and over again. And this certain thing that I'm doing is the way I group the information is obviously there's a lot of fourths going on in that era of jazz playing. When you think of people like Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, there's a lot of McCoy Tyner. There's a lot of quartal lines being played. There's a certain sound that I remember hearing a lot that is fourths. So I'll just play it here. Fourths moving up a fourth, and then up a half step and up a fourth. It's almost like a fourths in tritones. That kind of a sound. I'm sure you've heard this before. That kind of a sound. And then the other one that I'm using here in this line that I play is really, it's sort of fourths chromatically, just... those two tonalities, or those two tonalities is probably the wrong word, those two movements. So I'm playing a phrase, I think it was here. That kind of I think there was a minor, I also like minor third fourth. Some of that out of the diminished, but stuff like that. To me, it's that there's something about those fourths in tritones and fourths chromatically that have this beautiful atonal quality that you can kind of play in any situation, and they lead your ear in a very strong way, regardless of whatever other harmony happens to be going on. And then the other thing that I did is like a very cliche lick. I'm certainly guilty of playing a lot of cliches, which is it's commonly referred to as, I guess, the Oliver Nelson riff, where he's playing major triads, a major third apart. It's like derived from the Augmented scale. I hear that said a lot. I've screwed that up. That kind of a sound. And in this case, I think I did it on the D minor chord. I went. So I'm playing like an F triad. Obviously, that's right out of a D minor. F major is A major. But that D flat major triad. So it's like A major, D flat major, and F major over a D minor. And because it's major triads, your ear just follows that harmony really well. It's just like, and it's also because in the jazz world, that Oliver Nelson lick has been used so much that I think many of us just kind of recognize it, and our ear automatically follows it one way or another. So in the third chorus, I start out with another line that is derived from a lot of fourth motion. In this case, though, I'm not utilizing those sort of tritones or chromaticism. I'm using a different concept, but I think that if I remember correctly, I came across it in all the same places from the same sort of influences. And that is, there's a lot of these little fourth figures that you can come across in that music, similar to bebop in a lot of ways, that there's a lot of repeating little motifs that get used in different ways. for instance, just like here's a classic, like a fourth, and then a second. That kind of a sound. Even just, yeah, fourth, a like fourths and seconds. Here's a fourth, second, fourth. That's another one. Down a fourth, down a second, up a fourth. So I guess I never really thought about it that clearly, but there's a lot of fourths and seconds going on. So the way I grouped that information was that I sort of kept stumbling upon these combinations of fourths, mostly fourths and seconds. I mean, I would have to go through a lot of that stuff again to sort of analyze it more carefully. But what's important is it's a certain sound, and you want to be able to access it. So I kind of came across all those shapes and saw ways that people were fitting them together. And they were moving them in different intervals, often like I think that opening riff, I did something like, let me get that in there, yeah. Something like that. So it's not completely atonal, or it doesn't have a ton of weird jumps, but yet it doesn't sound like it's within one key. And I think that's the secret to the line, is that you hear these intervallic jumps, yet it doesn't feel restricted to, like, you hear people, I do it myself pretty regularly in certain tunes, and you'll play like pentatonic stuff, with a lot with fourths, but it sounds so strongly in that key, So a line like, it feels like it's moving in some different ways, and that has to do with just finding some patterns that connect. So, for me, it's always been transcription, and that process of transcribing and then experimenting based on what you transcribe. And the other two things of note that I do during this chorus, which are definitely not in any way outside, but they're worth maybe just mentioning quickly, is I play more fourths over the D minor chord, stretching fourths. Now that riff I stole directly. I do it all the time. It's like a complete lift, guitar lift, stolen from the great Ron Afif, who is wonderful New York guitar player, a hero of mine, someone I always loved his playing. So shout out to Ron Afif there. Stolen lick right there. And then over the E7 I do just E and B flat, those tritone triad. Major triads are tritone apart, which I do all the time. I think I played a very standard like lick, like something like that, over an E7. Hit that wrong last note, but yeah, you got the idea. So in the rest of the tune, there's a couple of more choruses. I play a lot of the same stuff. I revisit a bunch of the stuff with fourths, both chromatically and in different groupings and intervals moving around. I do play more of those augmented scale triad stuff. And I play a lot of traditional jazz language and jazz chord voicings in there. As always, my website, www.jazzguitarcoach.com. If you have questions or you want to get into the coaching program with me or just do some random lessons, I'm up for that, obviously, to get into more detail. But there on this video, there's more of that stuff. I'm trying to think if there's just really two other things that I do that might be worth mentioning. One is I superimpose the Coltrane changes over the static harmony of, I believe it was an A minor chord, shocker, summertime in A minor, which this is pretty regular, but it definitely might qualify as outside playing, just because you really are superimposing something. A different chord progression, one that is pretty drastically different, in terms of the written harmony that you would be thinking of. So I can't really remember. I think Coltrane's version of this tune, he might have had a different contrafact that was superimposing the Coltrane cycle, but I know when he played this tune, he did an alternate set of changes that was based on I think he made it like a weird dominant chord, like a dominant sharp 5 or something, like a whole tone thing. But I'd have to go back, and that was a long time ago when I was into checking all that stuff out very carefully. It's been a while. But anyway, I digress. So over the A minor, I've seen people talk about how exactly to superimpose the Coltrane cycle over different changes. From the way I've always done it, and what seems to just happen very naturally for me is to practice that cycle. Just things like that. Those kind of lines that just outline the cycle over and over again. And then I just find that once the cycle gets in your ear and in your hand very comfortably, it can just kind of you can move in and out of it pretty easly. In fact, I think what I did on this was I started in C, which is a little bit weird, but I mean the first 4 notes of the cycle are C if you're starting in C, are like C, C, D, E, G. I mean, let me back up. The way I'm playing it, the phrase I'm doing that 1, 2, 3, 5 pattern that Coltrane used to outline each chord. I'm not doing it on every chord, but I'm using it a lot. So the first 1, 2, 3, 5 pattern of implying that cycle would be C, D, E, G. I mean, and it fits with the chord. It fits with the harmony. So it's like a very inside sound. So your ear is hearing this inside fragment, and then you abandon it as you're going through the cycle, and it takes your ear on this journey. And I think the way I did it in the clip was I actually played something. And when I got there, because it was leading to the D minor, I abandoned the cycle and just like wanted to bring it in strong to the next chord. And that's what I mean about practicing the cycle enough that you can kind of move in and out of it very easily. And so the last thing I'm going to mention is this harmonic chordal technique I'm using, which I always heard piano players doing things like this, and it wasn't until my teacher from years ago, the great Paul Ballenbach. I'm sure many of you know Paul. He is a world-class guitarist, obviously. He used to live here in Washington, D.C., where I live, and I was lucky enough to study with him for a while, and great guy and great teacher, and obviously one of the great guitar players of our time. But he could do it, this kind of thing, like just forever on the guitar, and it was, he's a very exciting player, so it's the kind of thing that builds a lot of tension, and is very, very moving to see him do it like in a trio format or something. I was always very inspired by that. It was very simple in one way. I mean, it's not even theoretically interesting in terms of what you're doing. You're just moving shapes up and down the neck, usually with some upward momentum. Like I think I'm doing something that I start with like an A minor. Notice some of these shapes have triads as the melodies, and I think that really helps. I mean, there's no rules with this stuff, but these are just things I've noticed. Like that sounds really. Things like that. They just kind of this like cascading series of chords, but the real thing is starting at a certain point and building momentum and ending at a strong section. So you really have to be feeling the form and kind of aiming towards something. And I think in this video, I think the way I do it, it's about what I'm hoping for. I mean, like I just film these videos in my office here, and I just turn on the recorder and play. It's not like I've decided anything about what I'm going to play. So if I play something like that, it's just because it came out organically, and that's when it's going to, that kind of building and momentum is likely to sound authoritative and correct. All right, well, that was Jazz Guitar Breakdown number 2. Thanks for checking it out. Hope you dug it. JazzGuitarCoach.com is my website. Hit me up if you're interested in getting a conversation started about any of these topics. And please like and subscribe to my YouTube page. All right, take care, everybody.